Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. This time, we're going where few have gone before. Buckle up as we tackle autonomous trucks. Yeah, that's right. We're talking about a future where those 18-wheelers are driving themselves.
That's right. And it's a future that's closer than you might think.
Okay, so before we get too far down the road, let's lay out the roadmap for this deep dive. We're going to be taking a look at a pretty fascinating proposal, the Commercial Vehicle Autonomous Operations and Labor Protection Act of 2024. Quite a mouthful.
It is, but it gets right to the heart of the issue. How do we integrate autonomous vehicles into the trucking industry in a way that's safe, fair, and benefits everyone?
Right, and we're going to be exploring this act in detail, looking at its strengths, its weaknesses, and its potential impact on the future of trucking. And we're going to be exploring something else too, something that might sound a little radical at first, but stick with us here. We're talking about the idea of creating departments of technology,
Now, this is where things get really interesting.
right? And these departments are all about making sure the technology is used for good, that it's developed and deployed responsibly, that it benefits society as a whole. So that's the big picture for today's deep dive: autonomous trucks, departments of technology, and the future we're building together. So first things first, where did this proposal for an act come from?
Well, it actually originated from a pretty cool website, department.technology. You can check it out yourself. And they're advocating for something I think is long overdue. They want to see departments of technology established at all levels of government.
Departments of technology. Okay, I'm intrigued, but I need to hear more.
Think about it. Technology is evolving at an incredible pace, right?
Mhm.
And it's impacting every aspect of our lives. But our government structures haven't really kept up.
True, we still operate in these kind of old school silos: transportation, energy, health, education. But technology doesn't fit neatly into those boxes. It cuts across all of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why we need dedicated entities that are focused on technology specifically.
Okay, I'm starting to see the logic here.
And in the case of autonomous trucking, these departments would play a critical role in overseeing the rollout of this technology.
Right. I mean, we can't just throw a bunch of driverless trucks out on the road and hope for the best.
No, we need a plan. And that's where this act comes in.
So let's dive into that. What are the key goals of the Commercial Vehicle Autonomous Operations and Labor Protection Act of 2024?
Well, it's all right there in the name. This act has three main objectives. First and foremost, safety. Any autonomous trucking technology has to meet the highest safety standards. We're talking rigorous testing, strict regulations, the whole nine yards.
Yeah, safety has to be the top priority.
Absolutely. Second, we need to protect truckers, their wages, their benefits, their job security. We can't let automation lead to a race to the bottom.
I completely agree.
And third, we need to ensure a smooth transition, a clear roadmap for integrating autonomous systems into the trucking industry.
Makes sense. A phased approach rather than a sudden overnight shift.
Precisely.
So it sounds like this act is trying to find a balance between embracing innovation and protecting workers.
Yes, exactly.
And that's a tough balance to strike.
It is, but it's a balance we need to find.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of this act. How does it actually define some of these key terms? Like, for example, what exactly do they mean by autonomous operation?
Good question. Because that term gets thrown around a lot, but
Yeah.
the Act is actually very clear about its definition. Autonomous operation refers to any level of self-driving in commercial vehicles, from simple driver assistance features all the way up to fully driverless trucks.
So it covers the whole spectrum of automation in trucking.
That's right.
Okay, and what about another term that pops up a lot? Prevailing wage. What does that mean in the context of this act?
Well, prevailing wage basically means the average wage, benefits, and overtime pay that truckers in a specific area are currently receiving.
So it's like a baseline.
Exactly. It sets a floor to prevent companies from using automation to undercut wages.
Ah, it's crucial. We can't have companies replacing human drivers with robots and then paying those robots a fraction of the cost.
Agreed, that would be a recipe for disaster.
So this prevailing wage provision is all about ensuring that truckers don't get left behind in the transition to autonomous vehicles.
Precisely.
So how exactly does the act protect truckers? Let's say a company wants to start using autonomous trucks. What happens to their human drivers?
Well, the Act is very specific about this. Companies cannot use autonomous technology to lower driver wages below that prevailing wage we just talked about.
Okay, so they can't just cut their drivers' pay because they're bringing in robots.
Nope. They also can't cut their benefits or modify existing union contracts without consent.
Wow. So even if a company goes fully autonomous, they can't just cast their drivers aside.
That's right. The goal is a just transition, not just replacing humans with machines.
And how does the act ensure that happens?
Well, it specifically focuses on retraining and workforce transition in Section 5C.
Okay, so instead of leaving drivers jobless, they'd be given opportunities to learn new skills.
Exactly. There's even talk about creating a transition assistance fund to help drivers acquire those new skills.
That's really encouraging. So instead of fearing automation, truckers could actually see it as an opportunity to upskill and prepare for the jobs of the future.
That's the idea.
What kind of skills do you think would be valuable in this future, where trucks can basically drive themselves?
Well, a lot of people are focusing on technical skills like data analysis or even programming, and those will definitely be important. But we also need to remember those human skills. Communication, problem solving, critical thinking. Even in a world of autonomous vehicles, we'll still need people who can think on their feet and handle unexpected situations.
Right, because things are bound to go wrong sometime.
Of course.
And when they do, we'll need humans to step in and figure things out.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about protecting truckers' wages and helping them transition into new roles, but what about safety? I think a lot of people, myself included, would be pretty nervous about sharing the road with driverless trucks.
And you should be. Safety is paramount, and the Act tackles it head-on. It mandates that all autonomous commercial vehicles must meet the same federal safety standards and regulations as human-driven trucks.
So no cutting corners just because there's a computer at the wheel.
Exactly. Think about it. We have all these safety features in our cars today. Braking systems, lane keeping assist, all that stuff. Well, those same standards would apply to autonomous trucks.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better. So it's not like these driverless trucks would be out there operating in some kind of Wild West scenario.
Not at all. They'd have to play by the same rules as everyone else.
And who would enforce those rules?
Well, the Act envisions a collaborative approach, with federal agencies, state governments, and even private industry all playing a role.
So a lot of oversight to make sure that these autonomous trucks are operating safely.
Absolutely.
Now, this might sound like a strange question, but are there any situations where the rules of this act wouldn't apply? It seems pretty strict.
That's where things get really interesting. There's a whole section in the Act dedicated to exemptions.
Exemptions. So there are cases where we might actually want driverless trucks to break the rules.
We'll not break the rules exactly, but there might be situations where we need to temporarily suspend certain provisions.
When would that ever be a good idea?
Think about it. What if there's a major natural disaster? A hurricane, an earthquake, a wildfire? We need to get supplies to the affected areas as quickly as possible. But the roads are dangerous. It might be too risky to send human drivers.
Okay, I see your point.
In those extreme cases, we might actually want driverless trucks to be able to operate without some of the usual restrictions.
So they could get aid to people who need it, even if the conditions are too hazardous for human drivers.
Exactly. And the source material actually provides some really specific scenarios. Scenario 8 deals with wildfires, Scenario 9 focuses on earthquakes, and Scenario 13 even explores how autonomous trucks could ensure vital supplies keep moving during a pandemic lockdown, all while minimizing human contact.
That's fascinating. So in these emergency situations, the act would allow for some flexibility.
That's right.
But who gets to decide when those rules are suspended?
That's a great question. And it highlights the need for clear guidelines and oversight, which brings us back to those departments of technology.
Okay, let's talk about that. How would these proposed departments make all of this work in the real world?
Well, think of them as the tech quarterbacks of government. They'd be responsible for managing infrastructure, making sure different autonomous systems can communicate with each other, facilitating data sharing between agencies and companies, and working alongside existing departments like transportation and labor.
So a lot of collaboration and oversight to make sure everything runs smoothly.
Precisely. And here's what makes this concept even more interesting. It's not just the top-down approach, it's a grassroots movement. Department.Technology is calling for people like you, our listeners, to get involved. They believe that everyday citizens need to be part of shaping these departments and setting their priorities.
That's a powerful message. It's not just about the technology itself. It's about how we, as a society, choose to use it and who benefits from it.
Exactly. The technology is coming whether we like it or not. The question is, how do we want to shape its impact on our lives?
That's a great question, and one that we'll continue to explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
So stay tuned.
It's not just about the trucking industry, is it?
No, I think you're right. This whole conversation has got me thinking about the bigger picture, the future of technology in general.
It's a pretty exciting time to be alive, wouldn't you say?
Exciting and a little bit terrifying. I mean, think about all the advancements we're seeing. Artificial intelligence, automation, robotics, biotechnology.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it? And it's all happening so fast.
Yeah, it feels like we're on the cusp of a major societal shift. Like we're standing at the edge of a technological revolution.
And the question is, are we ready for it?
That's the million-dollar question.
Are we prepared for the challenges and the opportunities that this technological revolution will bring?
I'm not so sure.
I think that's why this conversation about governance is so important.
Right, we can't just let technology run wild.
Exactly. We need to be proactive. We need to guide its development, make sure it aligns with our values.
But how do we do that? I mean, it feels like such a monumental task.
Well, I think it starts with recognizing that technology itself isn't inherently good or bad.
Okay, I can see that.
It's a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill.
So it's all about how we choose to use it.
Exactly. It's about our intentions, our values, our vision for the future.
So it's not about fearing technology, but about being mindful of its potential impact
Precisely.
and about making sure that it serves humanity, not the other way around.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Now, you mentioned values. What kind of values do you think we need to prioritize as we navigate this technological revolution?
Well, I think things like fairness, justice, equity, those have to be at the forefront.
Absolutely.
We also need to be mindful of privacy and autonomy. We don't want to create a world where technology controls us.
Right. We want to be in the driver's seat, so to
Yeah.
speak. But how do we ensure that happens? I mean, it feels like technology is already moving faster than our ability to regulate it.
Well, that's the challenge, isn't it? But I think it starts with having the right conversations, bringing together diverse voices, tech experts, policymakers, ethicists, everyday citizens.
So a more inclusive approach to technology policy
Exactly. We need to break out of those silos we talked about earlier.
and create a more holistic vision for the future.
Precisely.
And that's where the idea of departments of technology comes in,
Right. These departments could play a crucial role in facilitating those conversations.
bringing everyone to the table,
Exactly. They could also play a role in educating the public about technology
making sure people understand the potential benefits and risks.
and empowering them to participate in the decision-making process.
So it's not just about experts dictating policy from on high,
No, it's about a more democratic approach, a bottom-up movement.
where everyone has a voice.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential of departments of technology, but how do we actually make them a reality?
Well, that's the million-dollar question.
Is it even possible?
I think it is, but it's going to take a lot of work.
And a lot of people power.
Exactly. Remember, the people behind department technology aren't just proposing an act. They're actively campaigning for the creation of these departments at every level of government.
So it's a grassroots movement.
It is. And they're making some real progress. They're building a network of supporters, engaging with policymakers, trying to raise awareness about the importance of having dedicated government bodies to manage the increasingly complex world of technology.
So it's not just a pipe dream.
Not at all. It's a real possibility, but it's going to take all of us working together to make it happen.
That's inspiring.
It is, and it's what gives me hope for the future.
Me too.
Yeah.
Because if we can come together and create these departments of technology, I think we can really start to shape the future in a positive way.
I agree. We have the power to make technology work for us, not against us.
And that's a future worth fighting for.
Absolutely.
And we're back for the final stretch of this deep dive. Our exploration of autonomous trucks, departments of technology, and how those two things might just intersect to reshape the future.
You know, as we've been talking about these departments and all the potential benefits, it's important to remember that no system is perfect.
Right. Even the best laid plans can go astray.
Exactly. So let's take a moment to play devil's advocate here.
Okay. I like where this is going.
Let's imagine we actually do manage to create these departments of technology at all levels of government. What kind of challenges might they face?
What kind of roadblocks might they encounter?
Right. What could potentially go wrong?
Okay, so challenge number one, funding.
Bingo. Setting up these departments isn't going to be cheap. We're talking about hiring staff, building infrastructure, conducting research, you name it.
And all of that requires money.
A lot of it.
And in today's political climate, securing those funds could be a real uphill battle.
Absolutely. Especially when you consider that some folks might see these departments as an unnecessary expense.
Like just another layer of bureaucracy.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say we manage to overcome that hurdle. We get the funding. What's the next challenge?
Staffing.
Of course.
We're talking about highly specialized roles here. Experts in computer science, data analysis, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, public policy, ethics.
The list goes on,
And not only do we need to find these experts, we need to convince them to work for the government.
which often means lower salaries than they could get in the private sector.
Exactly. So how do we compete with Silicon Valley?
That's a tough one.
It is, but I think it's possible.
How so?
Well, for one thing, we can emphasize the impact and purpose of the work.
Oh, I like that.
Working for a Department of Technology wouldn't just be a job, it would be a mission.
Right. A chance to shape the future, to make a real difference in the world.
Exactly, and that's something that a lot of talented people are looking for.
Agreed. Okay, so we've got funding and staffing. What else could trip us up?
Well, there's always the risk of bureaucratic bloat.
Oh, yeah. The dreaded bureaucracy.
It's a real danger.
Especially with any new government entity.
You start with the best of intentions, but then things can get bogged down in red tape. And before you know it, you've lost sight of your original goals.
So how do we prevent that from happening with these departments of technology?
I think it comes down to design and leadership.
Okay, expand on that.
We need to build these departments with efficiency and agility in mind.
Right, no unnecessary layers, no redundant processes.
Exactly. Clear lines of accountability. A culture of innovation.
And strong leadership.
Absolutely. We need leaders who are not only tech savvy, but also passionate about public service and committed to making government work better.
Okay, so we've talked about some of the potential challenges,
Yeah.
but let's step back for a moment. Even with all those challenges, do you still believe that these departments of technology could make a real difference?
I do. I really do.
Why?
Because the challenges we're facing in the 21st century are unlike anything we've ever seen before.
Climate change, cybersecurity threats, artificial intelligence, the changing nature of work.
And technology is at the heart of all of them.
So we need a way to harness the power of technology,
Mm.
to use it for good.
Exactly. And that's what these departments could do.
They could bring together the best minds, the latest technology, and the resources of government.
To solve problems, to create opportunities, to build a better future.
I love that vision.
And remember, it's not just a top-down initiative. The folks at Department.Technology are calling for a grassroots movement.
Right. They want everyday citizens to be involved.
To shape these departments, to set their priorities, to hold them accountable.
So it's not just about experts dictating policy from on high,
No, it's about a more collaborative approach.
where everyone has a voice.
Exactly.
Well, folks, we've reached the end of our deep dive. And I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a mix of emotions. A little bit of trepidation about the challenges ahead, but also a lot of excitement about the possibilities.
Me too. I think we're standing at a crossroads, and the choices we make today will determine the course of our future.
So let's choose wisely.
Let's be bold in our thinking, compassionate in our actions, and always hopeful about the future.
Because the future is what we make it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, happy exploring any.